Hello and welcome to Kalandra. Kalandra is a village in the hills by the popular resort of Posidi, on the western side of Kassandra in Halkidiki. My name is Daniela and I tell you about the history, mythology or art of the places I visit. But we are looking for lunch. And we stopped in this taverna. There are dishes that tell interesting stories about people, places, and shifting powers. And one of those dishes is Stifado. This Stifado is beef slow cooked in rich tomato sauce. And in Greece, there are as many variations on the basic recipe as there are cooks. Historically, the protein in Stifado was, well, whatever you've got, and sometimes was veal or beef, but sometimes it was rabbit or old donkey if things were tough. And by the coast it could have been octopus. But what was the original recipe? For that we need to move to a different country. Stifado comes from the Veneto region of Italy, the heartland of the Venetian Republic. Stifado comes from stufato. Stufato means cooked on a stove. Stove is stufa in Italian, but it also means fed up. Context is everything in languages, you have been warned. Stifado was born as a humble dish in the Veneto kitchens. An easy way to tell if a recipe started in the kitchens of the poor, especially in southern Europe, is by looking at the ingredients. Onions and garlic grew in the kitchen gardens of most homes, but they also grew in the wild. In short, they were free food. Poor people used them to add flavor to a dish, but also to bulk up their meals. And Stifado has a lot of onions and garlic. Stifado made use of tough cuts of meat and low quality meat in general, and it was an efficient way to cook during the winter. The stove was the main heating source for the home. The fire was kept alive all day, but it was subdued, and the burning embers were revived by adding small amounts of wood throughout the day. Stifado makes the best use of this low medium fire. The ingredients are placed in a pot that is then closed with a lid and placed on the stove, and it is left to simmer gently for hours. This slow cooking method softens the meat. The sinew in the meat melts into the cooking liquor, and you end up with a rich and nourishing broth. But this is the Venetian Republic in the 13th century, and things didn't stay humble for long. The wealth of the Venetian Republic was deeply connected to the spice trade. Venetian merchants had near monopoly on spice distribution across Europe. Spices such as cinnamon, cloves, and black pepper were used to elevate the humble stew and make it suitable for the table of the wealthy, but also, of course, to cover up the taste and smell of low quality old meat. Greek coastal regions came into contact with the Venetians often because of trade, military incursion, conquest, and invasion. So the Venetian stew jumped off the ships and landed in Greece. And the dish of meat in a whitish soup was adopted and adapted and became Stifado. Yes, you heard right. White. There were no tomatoes in Stifado. In the 15th century, the new power emerging in the eastern Mediterranean were the Ottomans. The Ottomans conquered the Halkidiki Peninsula in 1430, and the fall of Constantinople in 1453 put an official end to the Byzantine Empire, also known as the Eastern Roman Empire. And why am I telling you this? Because as Greece became part of the Ottoman Empire, Greek cuisine began to be more influenced by dishes coming from the rest of the empire, like Persia, the Levant, the area of North Africa that goes, roughly speaking, from modern Syria to the border with Egypt, and the Black Sea regions and the rest of the Balkans. Tomatoes arrived in Europe in the early 16th century. Initially, tomatoes were seen as a botanical curiosity from South America, and later as an ornamental plant. But by the 17th century, tomatoes were beginning to change the cuisines of Europe. They had not yet made it into the Ottoman Empire. There were tomatoes for sale in the markets of Constantinople, but they were green and sour, and used in pickling. But there are suggestions that these were actually not tomatoes but green peppers. And I have to tell you, I'm not convinced. Where I live in Bulgaria, it is still common for green, unripe tomatoes to be pickled by lactic fermentation method and then served during the winter as a side dish, or as a trusty companion during rakia drinking sessions. Red tomatoes began to be used in the kitchens of the Ottoman Empire in the early 19th century. Around this time, they make their appearance in Greece. As the story goes, tomato seeds were planted in the gardens of the Capuchin's monastery in Athens. In another version, a French family grew them as decorative plants in their garden. The first recorded dish using tomatoes date from the early 19th century on the island of Syros, in the Aegean Sea, roughly speaking southeast of Athens. By the mid-19th century, tomatoes were growing in popularity across Greece. But it wasn't until the 20th century that tomato sauce began to be added to Stifado. And, as they say, the rest is delicious history. Stifado is served with potato or rice, or you can just have it with bread and use the bread to mop up the sauce. When I make it at home, I like it with polenta, and then I use the leftovers to sauce my pasta. Stifado is a winter dish, but if you cannot visit Greece during the winter, I would say that if there is Stifado on the menu, try it at least once. I mean, what is more delicious than slow cooked meat in rich tomato sauce? In Kalandra, we had Stifado with rice. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to know how rice went from being a luxury to a common item in most kitchen cupboards. Thank you for watching. In my videos I tell you about the history, mythology or art of the places I visit in Europe. If you like this take on travel, please subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching, have a lovely day, bye bye!